Hello and welcome to the Large and Unnecessary First Player Token podcast. This is episode 56, I believe. My name is Chris.
Let's count at this point. I'm Euan.
I believe I'm Pawel.
We've done that many episodes over the past week, just catching up, that I've just lost track of which number we're on.
We've crammed quite a lot in.
So yeah, this is 56. 56. I'm pretty sure of that. I'll edit it in later.
I'll agree
if it's
with
wrong.
that.
Our level of confidence is high in that number.
This being an audio thing, we don't have to hold a glass over our face or anything like that. We can just cut in.
Just to hide the lip movements, you mean? Okay, so this is a board games episode.
Well, hey!
So Dave isn't here. He's been making a habit of turning up in our board games episodes. He's not an official member.
No.
He's just always here.
But he saunters in.
Yep.
But ID cards.
Like a less animated Kramer.
I need some paperwork for the official membership.
Oh yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
You should make Dave fill out a really complicated form. Asking him all sorts of weird stuff. Get some of his answers out of Dave, because he's still
sign over power of attorney.
Dave's still a mystery to me. I don't know what it is he even does.
He Daves.
He just seems to do a bit of this.
He regularly Daves.
So get some answers out of him finally. But he was here earlier, so we played a couple of games earlier, but he's had to leave to go and do something mysterious. But
he's left some thoughts.
He's left us a note, and he's asked us not to open it until the correct time. Okay. So when we're reviewing one of these games, we're going to open this note and see what it is he has to say about it.
Right.
Let's just get straight into this, because we've had a bit of a Japanese morning.
A morning and afternoon of Japaneseness.
We've played a couple of games by Japanese designers.
Yep.
Both pretty good games, solid games.
Yeah.
There's a lot of good stuff coming out of Japan in the past sort of few years in terms of board games
and sushi.
But that's
always been.
That's always been there.
Nothing's slowing the sushi or increasing the sushi flow. But the
sushi is steady.
Yeah, but the board game output is really
rising. It's rising, and they tend to be very what we would probably call weirder games. I think they tend to have strange themes and mechanics you've not seen before.
That you might not.
So instead of weird, let's call it new.
New, but we would consider it a bit weird, maybe.
Because you're set in your normalcy.
Yeah, set in our Western ways.
Yeah. I think that is it. There is like maybe a different sensibility how to approach game design that comes through in this.
Yeah.
Well, the Looper thing definitely is brand new experience.
Indeed.
Yeah. Well, we get into Tragedy Looper then.
Yeah, let's get into Tragedy Looper, because that's the first game we played.
Because it is, this is a very Japanese game.
Yeah.
I feel.
There's a number of films out there that sort of mimic this, yeah?
Yeah, I mean, the basic premise is you're three sort of agents, investigators, who are able to kind of loop through, sort of travel through time, reliving certain events, and you're basically attempting to avoid a tragedy of some kind.
Rewind the time is probably because they don't go in the future, and they only rewind a little bit of time. So this is essentially what you see in Life is Strange and a couple of animes out there, fairly popular nowadays.
It's similar to Time Stories. I think Time Stories came after Tragedy Looper. Tragedy Looper's a few years old now.
Good point.
But Time Stories does have that same thing where you basically loop through and start again.
Yeah. But I mean, I guess the whole theme and how you play through the games can be very different.
Yeah.
Because Time Stories is quite linear, I suppose, whereas there's kind of a bit of replay value, even though, as we discovered, there's certain things that you might not want to replay again, but we'll get into that. So yes, essentially you've got 4 locations on the board and various characters that come out, and various roles that those characters might be enacting throughout the game. It's now you divide into the players, so you can have. Now, is it a set you have to have the 3 players?
I think the game
there are rules.
I'm pretty sure there are rules for scaling it.
Yeah.
But
I think it's better.
I feel like it's been designed for there to be 4 players.
Yeah.
One player is the evil mastermind, and the other 3 is the investigators.
And certainly in the early stage of the game, and this is how the game tells you to play it, is that the mastermind is essentially kind of running the show.
Yeah.
They know what all the different sort of potential tragedies that can happen. They know all the roles of the characters that are out there, so they know how to beat the players,
yes,
the protagonists as they're referred to in this game.
Yeah,
and the protagonists then have to work out through there's certain ways that they can deduce what roles the different characters are playing, and how to sort of prevent these various tragedies unfolding. And it does that through a fairly simple set of mechanics, actually, when you think about it.
When you break it down, it's pretty basic.
Yeah. There's not. I mean, there's 3 types of tokens that can go onto the different characters. You can increase their goodwill, which usually, if you hit a certain threshold of goodwill, there can be 2 for some characters. That character will give you some kind of ability that you can either use once or throughout that particular loop,
which sort of mimics the relationship management which is present in so many Japanese.
This is the
games,
thing. It is. I mean, the theming and the kind of the setup for this is very kind of like Japanese anime melodrama sort of
art direction as well.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. I mean, obviously, it's very sort of anime aesthetic and everything like that. Artwork by Rei Konno. So there you go. That's first credit of the game. Yeah, so the other things you've got, you can increase paranoia, and either the players or the mastermind can do that for various reasons. You've got, and what was the other one? Intrigue as well, which can basically trigger certain events.
And only the mastermind can do that.
Yeah, only the mastermind can basically place intrigue.
So those are really the 3 tokens that you'll find on the board, either in the 4 locations or on the characters themselves. And depending on those tokens and the characters' special abilities, there's a lot of stuff going on.
Yeah. I mean, we won't go. There's probably not much point going into what the different scenarios are and what the players are, because essentially it would be a bit of a spoiler as well.
Yeah.
Any information you can glean from these is kind of. But what it will be is they will be broken down into different scenarios and that could potentially be playing out, and you'll have a main plot and 1 to 2 subplots with different. And you will have a chart. Each player will have a chart telling them what is in each one, but you don't know which one's unfolding. So you're trying to deduce that by working out what the roles are, because there'll only be certain roles in certain plots, and you can work that out by how the characters are affected and how they affect each other when they're moved about, and basically what the mastermind's doing.
Yeah,
and the mastermind has a tough job.
It is a tough job. So I mean, I was the mastermind, and I've always been the mastermind in this game, mainly because, well, if you've been the mastermind, you kind of have to keep being the mastermind because you've seen the scenario book and you know what's in it. And it is tough for the mastermind, especially. I mean, the scenarios are ranked by difficulty, and you can make them more difficult by giving the investigators less loops to play through. But the thing is, it's 1 person against 3, and the bonus the mastermind has, as you say, is that they have all the information, so they know exactly which person is which role. So they know who the serial killer is if the serial killer's in the game. They'll know who the lover is and the loved one is. So they can start doing certain things to make things happen in the game. So what we should say is that when you're playing this game, you actually play through loops. Now, there are a certain amount of days in each loop. Each day is just basically a round where you're playing a card to say, okay, I'm increasing this player's paranoia, or I'm moving this person to this location, or whatever. And there are several ways for the mastermind to end a loop in failure for the investigators, and that all depends on the scenario. It depends on what roles are in play. So, for example, if there's a key person in play, which is one of the roles, the key person, if the key person dies, that'll always end the loop. Now, the mastermind has to say that the loop has ended, but the mastermind doesn't say why the loop has ended. So there could have been several reasons why the loop had ended at that point.
Yeah.
So there might have been like intrigue on a person, to intrigue on a person, for example. That could be one of the ways that the scenario ends. And in the same round, the key person dies. Let's say the serial killer kills the key person. And if that happens, the mastermind doesn't say, okay, the loop ended because the serial killer killed the key person. They just say, the loop has ended, you have lost, and then you play the next loop.
Yeah.
And then you play through either until no tragedies happen, so there's no actual end game events happen. By the end of a loop, if that happens, then the protagonists win. If you get through the number of loops that have been predetermined before the game started, then the mastermind wins. Because the players have completely failed to stop the tragedies from happening. And that's what makes this game really interesting, because it is, like I say, it's like one person against three, if you're playing with the full complement. And yes, the mastermind has more things that they know, but that you tend to find that the players can really start to narrow things down. And what you guys were doing was deliberately letting things happen.
Yeah.
Was deliberately let this person be killed to see what happens.
Yeah.
And I was having a great laugh at that. With the fact, you in particular, Euan, were well up for killing people. Just
I did at one point, just on 2 consecutive rounds. I put there's a role of the serial killer, which tends to only, so far, has only really turned up in subplots. It tends not to like affect, like, end
not
the
like a
loop
main
immediately.
plot,
But I was like, well, if say a character ends their at the end of the day, and they're the only character in a location with the serial killer, and we knew who the serial killer was, had worked that out, they then automatically kill that person that's in there with them. So I just kept chucking characters in with the serial killer to see what they were.
to see what happens.
But that's the beauty of the game.
Does this end the loop?
Because you don't get your answers in any other way by observing what actually happens. So you can trigger certain things to take place on the board, and then if you're the looper, the investigator, you're essentially just studying this fairly large table full of various options, various abilities, triggered events, and anything else that may happen in the scenario you play. As soon as you notice something happen, you have to interpret why it happened, and through that you narrow things down. So even having some characters on the board die, in fact, this was actually one of the more tale-telling aspects. Somebody dies, and you immediately know who they were or who they weren't. So you just keep narrowing things down.
Yeah.
Well, you don't immediately know that. It just means that if somebody dies, they could have a role, but they may just not be like that role. That may not be reliant on the endgame conditions. They could have a different role.
Yeah.
But I mean, you're really just saying, that's not the key person.
Aye, there's certain things you can sometimes eliminate, but sometimes it's not as clear cut. Like, there's certain things you can do that are either mandatory or some of them are optional.
Or optional, yeah.
So you might take certain actions that are like, that kind of gives it away, or if you've got enough people doing certain things, then you can kind of cover your tracks a wee bit as the mastermind and kind of confuse them by doing the more you can do. Yeah, the more they're going to be confused.
Well,
basically.
that's it, and that's the thing with the mastermind. There's a lot of bluffing goes on if you're playing as the mastermind. There's a lot of you really do have to stop them from narrowing things down. So one of the last scenarios we played, there was one of the things that ended. If the loop ended and the key person had 2 intrigue tokens on them, then the protagonists lose the loop. But what I was doing was that I was just piling intrigue tokens on as many people as I could, so that you couldn't narrow it down, and it was just a smokescreen. But eventually, you did manage to narrow it down, because we went through a loop where I wasn't being able to put that much intrigue down because you guys were stopping me from doing it with your cards. And it was, that's what you do as protagonists. You have to try and do these things, and it becomes quite difficult for the mastermind. Especially when you're also doing stuff like trying to get the serial killer alone with people to see if you can find out who this key person is. And then I get to a point where I'm going, I'm an evil mastermind, and killing people is the kind of thing an evil mastermind should be doing. But at the same time, no, I don't want them to be killing multiple people, because that gives far too much information away about who these people aren't.
And I think this is the actual difficulty in the role of mastermind. I mean, it's difficult enough to navigate all the... there's so many options that are presented to you, and with every harder scenario, there is more and more of them. But the mastermind has also have to bluff so much
Yeah,
in order
so
not
much
to give
bluffing.
out information. This is another layer of challenge that the protagonists simply don't have. Protagonists can, in fact, just talk as much as they want because it's just going to confuse the mastermind most of the time.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just difficult for you, man.
I mean, one of the things, you have to keep so much information on the go, but also you're thinking as well probably about how the players react to what's given to them. Like things like, I mean, you talk about like the key person there. That's like the key person comes in as a role in quite a lot of the main scenarios.
Yeah.
So it's hard. It's a harder one to narrow down, and things like we had it worked out that the key person in that one was the only actual role, so we were able to narrow it down to the one scenario that had that. But then there's other ones there, and if, for example, say you'd gotten in a position quite early on in that first loop where you'd gotten somehow managed, say, got the serial killer in with the key person and just got them killed off early, and that immediately ends the loop.
Yeah.
Now that completely shuts us down because we might take we know there's a key person, but we've completely lost all other information on it, and then we're making assumptions beyond that point.
But then, every time. So if I had done that, then it would have like completely eliminated one of my smoke screens, basically.
Yeah.
Now, so what I tried to do in the first loop was basically try and create multiple situations where the loop had ended because of multiple things. Yeah. Okay, so that you could not like really figure out what was going on. But I mean, both of those ideas that you've got there, so killing the key person early to end the loop, okay, that's one thing, but like doing something else, like for example doing the intrigue thing that I talked about, they both give away certain bits of information, and they both hide certain bits of information, and you've got to really, as the mastermind, consider which ones to do when. You see what I mean? And it's like, and I really did consider killing the key person early. Like I really did.
Sacrificing certain information.
Yes, you when that's it, because it's damage limitation is the mastermind, because it's really just like how much information can you not give away in each loop is really what you're trying to do.
So it's asymmetrical, very asymmetrical play because your mastermind is sweating there, suffering, going through all the options, getting their brain fried.
I certainly was.
And then the protagonists are just joking around and wondering what else to do and how to foil the mastermind's plans.
Well, as per the box art, the protagonists are three adorable teenagers to
who knows?
Preteens.
Let's assume so. Yeah, you know what? Because I think this. I'm not well versed in the ways of anime, but I think there is a whole genre nowadays of not really time traveling, but time looping, time rewinding films out there. I've certainly seen one very good one called, I think, The Girl Who Leapt Through Time, and that was fantastic.
These are all specifically anime films.
Yeah. And it was a very good anime. And then Life is Strange is essentially the same concept. And so in most of these films, you're gonna have protagonists sort of discover that they have a specific whatever time rewinding talent, and then go through, let's say, through a scenario, still very much caring about whatever happens around them. And this is a key difference between all these animes or mangas or whatever other works of fiction and the way this game is structured, because it really helps if you don't care at all for any of the characters, and in fact you want them killed, you want them to suffer. You wouldn't see something like this in an anime. You really want them to experience all those. The game is called Tragedy Looper.
Tragedy Looper.
That's the word.
Loop the tragedy.
And you want to see those tragedies because they answer your questions.
True. Yeah. And there's one other thing that I want to say, because as if, like, just having the roles and you guys trying to figure out which of the plots that are in play, which of the subplots that are in play, there's a spanner thrown in the works in this game with the incidents.
Yeah.
The incidents are, and that's to do with the paranoia, really, because what the mastermind has is a card that tells you, all the players know when certain incidents are going to happen and what the incidents are going to be, and those can be things like, suicide, or there's somebody kills somebody, or
it's a very cheerful game.
Somebody gets more paranoid or something like that. Now,
or the shrine gets defiled or something.
The shrine gets defiled, stuff like that. It just gets more intrigue on it. Then the mastermind has a card that tells him who is the culprit of that incident, which means that if you manage to get that person to a certain level of paranoia, then the incident has to happen. It's mandatory. And that's one of the things you were saying, that, like, you know, the protagonist can put paranoia on people.
Yeah.
Just to see if an incident happens. But generally, the incidents they're not great for the protagonists in terms of they might end up ending the loop.
Yeah,
because
some of them
they tend to be very bad things that happen, but they will give you information. And yeah, I've got as the mastermind, I've got cards in my hand that can reduce the paranoia. So if I'm saying to myself, I don't want that incident to happen, because they might then figure out who it was that caused that incident, and I might want to use that as a surprise later in the game.
Very
I can
tale-telling,
reduce
though,
paranoia there. So there's more, like, there's another layer to the game with the incidents in terms of...
Well, that also gives a bit more challenge to the players as well, in that it does confuse the issue a bit, because the culprits carrying out the different sort of incidents, they might not necessarily have anything to do with the main or subplots.
Yeah.
They'll be chosen. You'll have that information specifically as the mastermind.
Yeah.
So that's the sort of thing where you might say, all right, well, that person's paranoia is going up, so they're probably the culprit. But you're looking at that, and then you're not thinking about what the main plot is.
Yeah.
So it's just another thing to distract you.
It is. It's like I said, it's another layer.
So at the beginning, I think this game looks a little bit intimidating simply because it's so different from what you're used to, and your main tool is an A4 sheet of paper, essentially full of tables, and numbers and various traits and events that can happen, and you immediately feel that your success or failure depends on you memorizing and being able to recognize between all these numerous options. But once you get the hang of it, and it happens much sooner than you think, then you realize how many layers of essentially deceit, bluffing, and just second guessing there is in this game. There's so much that can be done to actually play it properly competitively, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Like, once you get the hang of it properly and you know all your tools, then you know what, it's a huge battlefield full of feints and bluffs and stuff like that.
And I think that sheet that you were talking about it's confusing, and it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be confusing for the protagonist, because it's supposed to be hard for you to work out what the hell is going on here.
Well, things are broken down into all these different tables, and you're constantly looking at different information.
Is there a lover in the game? Is this person? That person could be, the serial killer, or that person could be the
It's
friend.
Kind of game where you probably want to take notes separately to the table, because keeping and going back referring to it can just be a bit of
I'm normally not a big fan
allowed.
of tables as such.
What are the rules on that, by the way? I don't know if we asked them.
I would say, me personally, I don't think there are any rules in the rulebook about it. Me personally, I would say it's against the spirit of the game.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be confusing.
Yeah.
I mean, there are the rules about table talk as well, which are in the rulebook, because you are supposed to limit table talk, so the protagonists really, they're not supposed to communicate that much information to each other.
Right.
We don't bother with that, because there's something better about like three people teaming up on one person and properly going after them.
And which is what we were
Not that
doing.
I'm paranoid, though.
But the table talk, and this is actually great about this game, because you get actual characters with predetermined roles, thematic roles really assigned to them, but also every scenario assigns a role specific to this particular scenario to those people. There is so much story building behind it, and us as protagonists investigate those scenarios. There is a lot of really good, in my opinion, really good fun and just telling bits of the stories that we see unfold in front of us. It's proper joy. Not many games offer this sort of things.
Cool. Right, okay, well, we unfold Dave's sheet and see what he has to say about it. I think it's time for some Dave comments.
Has left us some words regarding Tragedy Looper.
Okay, what does
this
this
say?
say?
I'll read Dave's notes.
Okay, read Dave's
He's left
notes.
us a rather melancholy little... The real tragedy is that I am not appearing in this podcast. Also, people who think guacamole should contain anything other than avocados and salt. That doesn't scan quite well. I broke that up a bit, but I think what he's saying is they are also a tragedy.
Right.
I'm sure there could be a scenario based on that, and tragically, Looper.
You can always rely on Dave for a good comment.
Thank you very much, Dave.
Cheers for the comment on that.
The input, yes.
And we'll take the guacamole advice under consideration.
Well, I think that's a good point to end this.
Yeah.
End this bit on Tragedy Looper.
It just sums it up well.
A little culinary tip.
Okay, Euan, do you want to give us the details? Of Tragedy Looper?
This is published in Europe by Z-Man Games,
Yes.
Publishers of various quality.
Agricola and stuff
Agricola,
like that.
Agricola was the one I think that
They've
was.
got their fingers in many pies.
And game designed by Baka Fire. Presumably some kind of online handle that he's just adopted in all aspects of his life, which is,
It's a nice little thing because, Baka means...
It doesn't mean idiot.
Stupid!
It means
It's
idiot.
just stupid. So
But
like,
he's
just
gone
daft.
for that English bit there. It's a backfire, isn't it?
Backfire.
Yeah.
Could be right. Yeah.
Nice
I don't know. I
wordplay
think
there.
like Baka and sometimes it can be just like you can almost like appropriate it for yourself. Like, I'm a punk, just an idiot, just kind of daft to be, which is fair enough if you want to do that.
And that came out in 2011, so that's a good few years old. I don't know, I think, if I remember correctly, I think the English version came out like 2 or 3 years later possibly, but I'm pretty sure I haven't had this game since 2011, and I'm pretty sure I got my hands on it quite early.
How many scenarios?
In the rulebook, there are 10, but I think there's a whole load of stuff online
you can
if you
vary
want
a
to.
lot.
And there are rules for making your own.
I
Which
would think
has
there would be.
like various things like, if you put this role in the game, add this many points on, and this is how you sort of work out if you're making a balanced game or not.
I think in terms of replayability, excellent game, and you can have a lot of fun with it for a long time.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Well, I think
great
this
fun.
is one now we'd probably be quite confident that if we were playing with the four of us again, just slapping down one of the like the full scenarios and just going for it.
Get paranoid.
You can take whatever comes.
Okay, well let's move on because we played another Japanese game this morning.
Yeah.
By a Japanese designer, I should say.
This one did not have a Japanese feel to it, but it was made by a Japanese person. Shall I just say? Yes, well, this is Fairy Tale by Satoshi Nakamura. The company that made it is called What's Your Game?
Okay, well, Pavel, this was your first experience with this game because we've played it before you.
Aye.
It's a card game.
Yeah.
It's got 100 cards in it, and that's it.
We sat in a bothy and had
we did, up in the
a
Highlands.
good evening of drinking and playing Fairy Tale.
We did, which was really weird.
Had some stovies as well.
Oh yeah, we had a big bowl of stovies, all those Scottish things
So,
with a Japanese game with a
So
weird
beer,
medieval
stories,
fantasy
and
set.
fairy tales. That's just your evenings.
Yes.
Nice.
By the half.
So
Okay.
yeah, a card game then. Very much so. I don't believe any tokens whatsoever. Nah, nothing.
Nothing.
And quite a small box, quite a simple set of rules. Maybe, I think, well, to me it was confusing at first, mostly because
It is.
most of the card games I've played just played differently. And this one, with all the card passing left and right, just seemed different. But essentially, what you're trying to do here is you're dealt, as a player, you're dealt 5 cards, out of which you have to pick one, give 4 others to the person to your left and right, depending on which round there is. In the standard play, I believe there's 4 rounds. And you keep selecting those cards this way. You get 4 cards from another player, you select 1 from those and give the remaining 3 to the other player, and things get traded this way around the table until
It's
you have...
a card drafting mechanic.
Yeah.
That's all it is.
Yeah. So eventually you end up with 5 cards. Some of those were chosen by yourself because you really needed them, and some of those were just discarded by everybody and you really don't need them at all. What you end up doing after that is just playing. Every player plays 1 card, which then comes into sort of effect. If there is nothing instant, you just add it to your sort of scoring board, and you play 3 cards this way. You discard the remaining 2, and that's the first round down. There's 4 rounds in total. What you're aiming to do is get as many points as you can. Each of those cards has a value assigned to them. Some of these cards are fairly easy they just have a value, and you get that many points once you get to the scoring round. But most cards will have various conditional icons, I'm going to say, on the cards. Most of these cards belong to some sort of subset. There is enough info on these cards to make for a fairly large number of strategies you can
I would agree with
you
that.
can go for. This, as you said, this was the first time I played it, so I essentially had no idea what I'm doing. The first card I got with my basic understanding of rules was, I'm gonna actually score this number if I focus on playing the largest number of, I think it was character cards out of all the players in the game. So I just focused on that. At some point I got another fairly strong card which also required of me to have the largest amount of another sort of subset of cards, and I just focused on those two. Along the way I just had enough luck to score a number of other subsets, and this is what you end up doing. You want as many cards just affecting each other or boosting each other's values.
What's interesting about this is, well, it's like you say, there are multiple strategies that you can take in this, and a lot of that comes from the fact that there are just multiple ways that the cards sort of affect each other, because you're not just playing cards and then just throwing them into your points thing. There may be certain things you have to do, because a good chunk of the cards have open and close symbols on them. There's also a hunt symbol. That's a bit weirder. So basically, I mean, the game looks confusing because they've gone for a really language independent thing. So there is no text on the cards. It's all just symbols, as you tend to find with these kind of games where they've tried to eliminate language from them.
There is text on cards, but that's just character names.
Which nobody cares about.
Yeah,
lied.
we don't care about that.
You give it your own.
He tends to lie.
That's only a half true.
Because I was lacking quite a lot of understanding of rules, I was trying to stay away from cards I couldn't understand. So all these cards that close or open other cards, I just kept trading because I didn't understand the impact of it.
Basically, what it does is the symbols on the card will say something like open, and it's just a green thing. It doesn't really matter, but it just means that you open, and then there's another symbol that tells you whether it affects you or it affects anybody else, somebody else, and then there's a symbol that says what you have, what card that affects, what type of card that affects. So it might just say that you need to open a yellow card, which just means that if you've got a yellow card that's face down in your scoring area, you can turn it face up, which means that you can then score for it at the end of the round. You've also got the closed ones. A lot of those affect you, but you tend to find that they're higher point value ones, so you can turn face down a card of a lower point value.
Deciding to sacrifice a card in order to get a powerful card, with keeping in mind that you're going to use another card to reopen it if you can. Yeah,
you can do that in the future, aye. And that's assuming that you get that card, you get one of those cards out. Yeah, you've got the closed ones, and those can also affect other people, so you can force somebody else to close a certain card. There are 4 suits in this game, we'll call them. So 4 different colours of card. And the black ones, they're sort of the evil demon cards sort of thing. You tend to find that they're quite powerful, but they also do quite nasty things. So you can force other people to close their card, turn them face down. It's a kind of weird term, that, the open and close thing, because it's just face up and face down. It just means the same thing. Yeah. So you can force somebody else, maybe you'll play one of these demon cards and it'll force somebody else to turn one of their green cards face down, and that can really affect their scoring. But there are also other things in the game. So there are cards that link up with other cards, like ally cards. So if you've played both of those types of cards, and you'll score bonus points for them, and they might be cross-suit as well. So it might not be, you might, if you're saving up yellow cards, that might not be the best way of scoring the most points. But there are other cards that'll be like, if you've got the most yellow cards, you'll score this for that. If you've got the most, there's also little symbols in the top. Is it book, map, and head thing?
And a person,
a person's head, a bust thing. So there's 3 of those symbols as well on the card. So if you've got the most of those, and blah blah blah. Other cards, like if you've got at least 2 green cards and 2 red cards, and you score this many points and stuff. So there's a lot of different ways of comboing these things, and there's also a lot of ways. It's not just you passing some cards to another player and then playing the best card that you've got, because you might want to start shooting other people down. So you might want to start playing those cards that'll just be like, you get rid of that card, it's going to give you loads of bonus points at the end of the game. I'm not having that.
I think it feels like everything in it, as you're going through the game, it's like all of your points, all of your sort of your any kind of plans you have for sort of building it, and you can get a lot if you combo things up really well. But it's all so precarious that it can get taken from you, or you just might not get what you need on the route on like the card drafting part.
It feels like the card drafting part is actually a very, very important aspect of the game.
Yeah, it really is.
And also it's I suppose, especially to somebody that hasn't tried this or considered this in the past, it's rather difficult to come up with a proper strategy to go through that, because it's one thing once you have a hand of cards or a plan in your head. It's one thing to know what you're aiming for, how you want to score your points, but when you trade cards around, you have to think about what you, as you said, what you want to stay away, as in keep away from other players, what you're possibly gonna get back if it goes around the table and things like this. It's not easy to actually devise a strategy for that part of the game, I think.
I mean, it makes it kind of, because you make a choice of whether something is worth your while or not. And, and you sometimes make. I mean, I know I made the wrong decision. Whether I had a very high scoring yellow card. It was one of the suits, and it was dependent on you getting another one out, which was also quite high scoring. So there were a really good pair of cards to get out. And I had that one, and I was looking at it. I was like, well, I've got this other one that can combo with other stuff to get some more points. This one, am I going to get the thing out? Is there any chance of it? It's like, because it was like one card out of the entire deck. So I was like, you know what, I'm not going to I'm going to discard it. So that went. It wasn't even played by anybody. Next round, first 5, I get my 5 cards. The card I need was in the hand that I got from so I could have kept it, could have got that out, but that's just the way the game goes. It's that precarious.
There is a bit of pushing your luck, I suppose, in terms of because some, like you say, some of the cards combo with other cards, and then if you take one of those cards, you're kind of taking a risk on whether you're going to get more of that card out. Yeah. Because you can score multiple points for having multiple copies of the card out. So
it is definitely, it's one of those games that it seems like you could be going for a very high score that could collapse into nothing. Yeah. Absolutely nothing.
You can go for one round potentially scoring 60 points to end in the game with 25 or something. It is one of those games. Yeah.
And you really have to, and I suppose when you're advanced enough to do it, you probably have to keep a good eye on all the other players, not just yourself.
Yeah,
which is what I wasn't doing.
Because I think there is a trap in this game where you do get too focused on what you're doing, and you're not paying attention to what other people are doing. And like I say, you can use some of those as sort of demon cards to really mess with other people's plans, and you really should be paying attention to what's going on. I mean, I screwed your plans up, I think, Euan, didn't I?
Aye, but I think I was humped on that game anyway, to be honest. I don't think I'd got out some of the combos.
So yeah, well, shall we say that and generally it may have been made by a Japanese guy, but it's just a standard Western aesthetics and genre, I'm going to say, with your dragons, elves and fairies.
All of the kind of the character, like the figures on the cards are quite sort of like not fully mangafied, but they've got a bit of that.
There's elements of it.
It's actually quite a nice art style.
No, nice art style.
And it's quite detailed as well. Yeah. There's a lot of work gone into this artwork, I think. Yeah. I don't know if this comes from some other thing. Like, I just can't figure it out.
In terms of like the look of it, it's not exact, but like it reminds me a wee bit of this manga called Berserk, which is like probably one of the only full-on fantasy world, kind of like that medieval feel to it, mangas that I've really read. It's got a beautiful art style and it's really kind of grim.
What about Record of Flodo's War thing?
Never heard of it. Don't care.
I thought this was like the.
Euan only cares about the things he knows.
I don't care about people telling me about stuff. No, but I don't know. That was just like it reminded me a bit, because there are like wee daft sort of things in, like, you know, like fairies and stuff like that. But it's got and like the way the look of some of the armour and stuff like that, the way it's drawn, kind of reminded me a bit of that. So there's maybe some inspiration there.
Yep. Now, the other thing that we should say is that this game plays really quickly.
Oh yeah, it says on the box 40 minutes. It may have even taken us less than that.
We played a 3-player game, and by the time we actually got started, by the time Pawel had figured out kind of what was going on with this game, it took another 10 minutes.
Yeah.
I mean, you're only playing 4 rounds. I feel like the game has been designed to play with a full, I think it's 5 people.
I think it would be better.
Because when you're playing with less than that, you still only get the same amount of cards, so a good chunk of that deck goes unlooked at.
Also, there's less interaction, if there's less players, because we don't contradict each other that much.
Yeah, that's true.
When there's 5 players, there's a lot of fighting for all those combos.
Out of the whole time, we only got 2 of those cards that closed other people's. Yeah. Which I would have expected there to be more of that going on.
But I think we just got unlucky with the chunk of the deck, because we have played it, like we say, we've played it before, when we played it up in the Highlands. In that bothy, I remember there was a lot more interaction going on. There was a lot more people closing each other's cards and I remember me having to reopen quite a lot of my cards towards the end of the game to try and score my points for them.
It seems like it should be a bit more chaotic.
Yeah.
And you should be just constantly hobbling each other through the whole draft system and closing each other's cards and stuff.
So play it with 5 or more.
It's just 5 is the limit.
Fair enough.
Just play it with a table, 10 folk at a table. See how it goes.
Run out of cards straight away.
Yeah, it doesn't work.
Okay, so that's Fairy Tale. Light, quick, easy to play card game.
Fun wee card game for the lads.
And it's, like Pawel says, it's in a small box, yes. That's the reason why I took it when we went hiking and camping and stuff, is because it's that small, you could just put it in your pocket and carry it around with you if you wanted to.
No tokens,
Yeah, no tokens, just cards.
Lovely.
Okay, so Pawel, you've been itching to talk about Arkham Horror.
Yes, well,
for
just a little bit, just a bit of an update, really, because I'm still playing it.
This is the board game Arkham Horror you're talking about?
No, it's a card game. Arkham Horror, the card game. We talked about it.
We talked about it a few weeks ago.
A few months later.
2 or 3 months ago. Yeah.
So, just to remind, the original the first box of Arkham Horror, the card game, apart from all the rules and initial investigators, also has 3 scenarios as such, which are made up into a small campaign, so you can play each of those scenarios in order and get a campaign out of it. But that was a long time ago, and since then Fantasy Flight Games have released quite a lot of expansions, and I've played some of those. There are 2 currently available, 2 standalone expansions, which, if you like, you can also play as part of any other campaign. You just sort of fit a scenario in between of all the others. One of them is called The Curse of Rougarou, I suppose. The other one is...
Excuse me?
Rougarou. It's a French word. You try it.
Rougarou.
Rougarou.
You sound like you're drowning, Pawel.
And the other one is Carnival of Horrors. Those are the standalones. Right now, the Dunwich Legacy is also out. This is a proper, I think the Fantasy Flight Games call it the deluxe expansion, which means instead of a booster size of the add-on, it actually comes out with in a proper large box, pretty much the size of the original Arkham Horror card game box. The Dunwich Legacy is actually a campaign that's 8 scenarios long. The first box, the deluxe expansion, consists of initial 2 scenarios, and then the remaining 6 scenarios come out in booster size. And most of them are out now as well, apart from, I think, the last one, which is called Lost in Time and Space. So, I should also probably mention that the Dunwich Legacy, being the deluxe expansion, also has additional investigators and, in general, a lot of cards. The deal with... Because I'm not sure if we've mentioned it in the original review of Arkham Horror, the card game. The deal with campaigns is really fairly simple. If you want to play a campaign instead of standalone scenarios for Arkham Horror, the card game, you have to just keep track of what the key decisions or outcomes of whatever scenario in the campaign you've just completed, and any potential lasting damage your character is carrying on themselves. And then you just play another scenario naturally unfolding in this campaign. You get experience points after each scenario, which you can spend buying slightly stronger versions of the cards you have in your deck, or just new cards, which cost more than zero, I should say, because your basic deck in Arkham Horror, the card game, mostly consists of your basic cards and just a couple of them slightly stronger. If you want to play standalone adventures as part of the campaign, you actually have to spend experience points just to be able to play it with an advanced deck, I should say. And just a quick word on the new investigators and the Dunwich Legacy Deluxe box, because there's, as I mentioned, 6 new. I'm going to say 5, I think, new investigators. Each investigator in Arkham Horror, the card game, has got a sort of a class, yeah? There is guardians, cultists, researchers, and things like this. So, effectively, that means that they will be able to use a specific set of cards, along with the neutral cards that everybody can use. The original game had all its investigators sort of strongly themed, so each of the original investigators were assigned one of these classes as the primary class, and they could attempt to play as a secondary class, but with much smaller degree of success, simply because as you're deck building, you're only allowed to go for a specific I'm going to say strength of cards as such. In Dunwich Legacy, there is a few investigators that have a much sort of broader freedom when it comes to building your deck. So that just allows you, I suppose, to diversify your investigators quite a bit. But sorry, just the thing I actually wanted to talk about this, because I've not started playing Dunwich Legacy yet. All of this I did not want to talk about.
It's good that you've told us about the Fantasy Flight business model.
Yeah, that's pretty much what it is. Once you've completed the original,
he's going for a job, Euan.
The original campaign,
those booster packs.
you have a fairly good understanding of what this game is and how it plays, what to expect from an average scenario. And I suppose that the Dunwich Legacy might just follow the same structure. I was quite surprised, and I wanted to mention this, that the standalone adventures feel very different and play very different from the original campaign in the box. The Curse of the Werewolf, I'm going to say, Rugaru, yes, Rugaru, I don't know how to do it, that takes place in New Orleans, and your investigators are essentially hunting a werewolf creature. And it's a huge change. You're not being hunted yourself, you actually hunt others, and there's a few other really interesting twists in the game which make it... You're almost the actual antagonist in this game.
It's the real monster after all.
Sort of, yeah.
That's becoming a slogan for this podcast.
Well, I don't know. It's one of those things that we now, any time it turns up as a plot device or something, you just cannot help but
Humans
point
are
it out.
real monsters.
So they are, yes. In some of the scenarios in this card game, movement is quite crucial. The way you do it and the way the scenario rules govern movement. Same in Carnival of Horrors. Completely different way of managing character movement, and completely different dynamic of how to play the game and how to win it. So I think those two standalones suddenly showed me that the game has much more potential. I mean, this is a great game to begin with, for storytelling and for just the general challenge as such. The gameplay mechanics are great as well, but those two standalone expansions suddenly show you how much can be done with this game if you're not constrained by your, I'm going to say, standard idea for how an investigation like this should unfold. If you're playing Call of Cthulhu and you're going through whatever dusty tomes in order to find some secrets or whatever ancient one, if you go for those two booster packs or whatever they call, you'll find out that there's so many other ideas that can be used successfully in Arkham Horror, the card game sort of gameplay model. So I'm curious to see how diversified the Dunwich legacy will be, because that's going to be a proper long campaign, 8 scenarios. Although I think you only play 7 of them in a row, because at some point you've got your fork along the way. You have to turn left or right, so you essentially play one of the scenarios before the other, and some of them might not happen and things like this. There's a proper pathway there. So yeah, that's just an update from me. I'm playing it solo because you can, and if you can, that means you should, really. Which is presenting its own, I'm going to say, factor in the whole challenge/surviving these things. Some aspects of Arkham Horror, the card game, are much harder if you play with a single investigator. Some aspects are actually much easier, so yeah.
Are the investigators that have been added, are they completely new, or are they sort of things that have existed in the previous sort of Arkham?
Oh no, you get your dude with the cursed trumpet and things like this. I mean, which is one of the backbones of, I can't remember his name, but
Eric Zahn.
I can't remember.
It's a violin, is it not?
Well, yeah, that's a violin, that story.
Aye.
Right, well, there's a myth. This is not only for the monsters, but also for the investigators and Fantasy Flighters, keeping quite a lot of original investigators, because there's a whole line
I really
of games.
miss Trash Can Pete, or whatever his name was.
Oh, yeah, is
I really miss him.
in these?
I've not seen him
in
yet.
the original Arkham Horror video game. We used to just call him Shotgun Hobo.
Aye, Shotgun Hobo. Well, he's in quite
He was amazing.
Because they kept him in Eldritch Horror, the update.
Did they? Because I can't remember.
Pretty sure, because I'm sure he's also in... He's in Eldritch. No, wait.
We need to play Eldritch Horror more.
There's too many. Eldritch Horror's the
We
card.
keep failing at that.
That's the one with the dice.
Eldritch Horror?
Yeah.
No, that's
the
Elder Sign.
Elder
no,
Sign.
yeah.
Yeah. See, I get
Too
struggle
many,
with all these.
too many Lovecraftian
Too many
games.
Lovecraft games. Yeah.
Well, there is a lot of them. Some of them better, some of them amazing. I'm going to say that this one is really good. Quite a lot of these, characters are from earlier games as well. I'm sure that Jenny, the dilettante,
Yeah,
she definitely was in the previous games, and a number of others as well. So, more info to come as I actually go through the proper bigger campaign.
this is a game that me and Dave started the campaign, but I've only got the base box.
Yeah, so 3 scenarios.
And with 3 scenarios. We played the first 2. I think we tried to play the first one, failed possibly, and we started again. And we never went back to it, and I don't know why, because it's actually a really, really bloody good game, and it's really well designed, and there's just a lot of nice things in it, nice touches, nice bits of story and stuff like that. It's really good. Really need to get back to playing that.
Absolutely.
Okay, so let's wrap this up here then. That's another episode, 56, done, in the bag.
It's a beautiful one.
Yep, we will give you out our internet stuff, or internets. You can email us. That's firstplayertoken@gmail.com. That's FIRST, player token, all one word. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, SoundCloud, iTunes, YouTube. That's all the large and unnecessary First Player Token, or our Twitter handle is @1ST Player Token.
Once the player token.
Thank you very much, Euan. We have a website, which hopefully I'm going to do some work on very soon. We have a Discord if you want to come and chat to us on that, and we've got various things set up in there if you want to just talk about board games or video games. There's channels for that, so you can find that at discord.me/firstplayertoken. We now have a PlayStation Network community, so you can look for us on there as well.
We're a community now.
My Twitch username is Unnecessary Chris if you want to watch us sometimes playing board games, and I very occasionally stream some video games on there. I played a little bit of Friday the 13th the other day there on Twitch, using the terrible mic that, the one that plugs into the PlayStation controller, the little ear thing.
That
you
one.
can't hear
yeah.
anything with that. I mean,
no.
I'll have to start using a proper mic for it.
Oh, is that like just the little one?
Yeah, the one that
ear
goes in
thing,
your ear.
yeah.
Don't ever use that for streaming. It is so bad. It just does not pick you up. Anyway, that was just a little moan about that.
Looking forward to hearing your thoughts on that game anyway.
Oh yeah, that'll be next week. I think we'll get that in next week. So we'll have a video games episode next week. But also before that, we are part of the Podnose Network,
UK's leading entertainment podcast network.
Thank
I
you,
should
Euan.
get a job for them.
You should.
Apart from the one what's kind of a job for them, but no really.
It's work that you don't get paid for.
It's work.
That's
I'm
the
getting paid
best
for
kind.
it. But
Ah, who you getting paid by?
Oh, well, shit, I've said too much.
All right,
So how are you paying
you got
us
a
then?
sponsorship deal?
Eh?
The Sausage Council of Great Britain or something?
You come round here and play all my board games, Pawel. You get
okay.
enough payment. Alright.
Nice.
Anything new happening in Podnose, Euan? Any idea? Things still going strong?
Just plugging along, as it does. Nothing more to add that I haven't already said in previous weeks.
Well,
Keep
thanks very
calm and
much.
carry on.
You can find the Podnose website at podnose.com. There's just a huge amount of podcasts on there. How many are on there now, roughly?
So over 30.
There's over
Well
30 now.
30.
On a variety of different topics. So if you want to hear us, not us, but if you want to hear other people talking about things that are not gaming, then that's where to go.
It's the place to be for the UK podcast enthusiast.
Indeed. So yes, next week it'll be video games, but until then, thanks for listening.
Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.